Let your eyes grow heavy as we drift back into the old pixel-bright world of Pokémon. Tonight, there are no tough battles to win, no timers to beat, no pressure to catch everything before you sleep. Instead, we're just going to wander slowly through 151 gentle little facts and stories. Some will feel familiar, like meeting an old friend on Route 1, and some might be tiny details you never noticed at all. You don't need to remember them. You don't need to keep count. You can just let them pass by like soft, looping game music in the background. So settle in, get comfortable, and let the world of Kanto unfold again, one quiet fact at a time. Long before most of us met Pikachu or walked out of a small house in Pallet Town, Pokémon existed only as a quiet idea. It began in the mind of Satoshi Tajiri, a kid who loved wandering outside, collecting insects and watching how they appeared and disappeared with the seasons. That simple joy of looking under rocks and into tall grass to see what might be hiding there became the heart of a game. In those days, Game Freak wasn't a legendary studio. It was a small team trying to do something unusual on a little gray handheld that many people already saw as limited. Most Game Boy games were short bursts, a few levels, a quick puzzle, something to play for a couple of minutes at a time. The idea behind Pokémon was different. Instead of a brief distraction, it aimed to be a long, wandering adventure you could carry everywhere. Not just a high score to chase, but a tiny world that lived inside your pocket and opened up whenever you switched the power on. One of the most important pieces was something most kids barely thought about: the link cable. It was originally meant just to let two players face off in simple head-to-head games like Tetris. But Tajiri looked at that cable and imagined tiny creatures moving along it, traveling from one player's universe into another. The earliest name for the project captured that feeling. It was called Capsule Monsters, inspired by toy capsules you twist open from vending machines, never quite knowing what's inside. Small creatures living in little containers, traded and collected, carried in pockets and bags, always ready to be revealed. That name didn't survive. There were legal issues, trademark conflicts, and worries about how it would sound around the world. But the image of rounded containers with mysterious beings inside stayed, quietly changing shape until it became the Pokéball. While all of this was forming, the team was constantly wrestling with the Game Boy's limits. The cartridge didn't have much memory, so every sprite, every sound, every map tile had to justify its place. The decision to include 151 different Pokémon wasn't just creative ambition, it was a puzzle of how to fit all that life into such a small space. To save precious memory, the developers reused data wherever they could. That's why some early Pokémon share oddly similar cries, just pitched differently, or tweaked slightly. What sounds like two completely different creatures to the player might actually be two variations of the same tiny sound file behind the scenes. Within the game's internal data, some Pokémon show up earlier than others, a sign of when they were designed. Redon, for example, appears very early in that order, hinting that it was one of the first fully realized monsters. Those stone statues you see in older gyms and Pokémon centers, they're essentially stylized Rhydon models, a little fossil left over from the game's earliest days. Clefairy has its own quiet bit of history. Its simple, rounded shape made it a perfect test subject for early animations. For a time, Clefairy was used so often in test builds that it was seriously considered as the main mascot before another electric mouse quietly stepped into the spotlight. Inside the small Game Freak office, the work was anything but glamorous. Developers shifted roles, worked long hours, and sometimes had to continue even when the project didn't look commercially safe. There were moments when the whole thing could easily have been cancelled or downsized. But the team kept going, guided mostly by instinct and love for the idea. They believed that collecting and trading these little creatures could feel special, even on a tiny monochrome screen. It's strangely soothing to imagine someone late at night, testing a route for the 100th time, listening to the music loop and hoping that children would walk this path someday. The world they built, Kanto, wasn't just a random map. Its shape and layout loosely echo part of real-world Japan, especially the areas around Tokyo. Pallet Town represents a quiet rural edge, while cities like Saffron feel like dense, buzzing centers, giving the region a subtle sense of familiarity to players in Japan. Even the town names follow a gentle pattern. You start in Palette Town, named like an artist's blank palette, a neutral place where your story hasn't really begun yet. From there, you travel through Viridian, Pewter, Cerulean, Vermilion, and others, each hinting at colors, as if you're slowly painting your journey across the map. Inside the cartridge, time behaves oddly. The sun never moves, shadows don't shift, yet you travel from forests to caves, from seaside routes to mountaintops. For many kids, this was their first taste of a game that felt like a continuous world instead of a stack of levels. The link cable hanging between two Game Boys became more than plastic and copper. It turned into a kind of invisible bridge between players. Over that bridge, data traveled, but it felt like real creatures were crossing, like you were handing over a living partner to a friend. This simple idea changed how the game felt. You weren't just playing alone. Some creatures could only evolve if you trusted another person enough to trade them away. That quiet requirement nudged kids toward cooperation, long before game design buzzwords like social features were common. When people think about the original 151 today, it's easy to imagine them as a perfectly planned set. But behind the scenes, they were more of a collage, early sketches, refined concepts, last-minute changes, and a lot of compromise with the hardware. Some monsters stayed almost exactly as they were first drawn. Others went through many forms before they settled into the versions we know. Even the order of the Pokédex hides a little mystery. It doesn't strictly follow when each monster was created, and it doesn't perfectly match the order you encounter them. It's a blend of design timelines, gameplay considerations, and internal logic that only the developers truly understood. What matters for a sleepy mind is simply that all of this fit together in a way that felt natural. Kids playing on long car rides or late at night probably never guessed how much quiet engineering sat beneath each step. They just walked from town to town, hearing the music change, watching the screen shift from greenish forests to gray caves and blue seas. The first moments of the journey say a lot about the game's heart. You try to leave Palette Town by walking into the tall grass. Before you can wander too far, Professor Oak appears and gently stops you, explaining that it's dangerous to go alone without a Pokémon. This isn't just a tutorial, it's a tiny story beat that defines the world. The wild isn't evil, but it's powerful, and you're small. You're told, without a lecture, that you don't face this world alone. You share it with creatures who can protect you if you care for them. Then come the 3 Pokéballs on the table. They're simple sprites, but they carry a surprising weight. Behind each one is not just a type or a moveset, but an entire flavor of memory for the person who chooses it. Ask someone which first partner they picked, and they'll often answer with more than just a name. They might tell you about losing their first big battle, or finally beating a tough gym with just a sliver of HP left. A small decision made on a pixelated lab floor becomes part of their personal story. All of this memory constraints, reused sounds, color-named towns, early designs like Rhydon and Clefairy, the quiet importance of the link cable lives under the surface of the game. You don't need to know any of it to enjoy walking through Kanto. But thinking about these small truths now can feel oddly calming, like discovering the hidden workings of a familiar music box. The game finally released, almost like a cautious experiment. At first, success came slowly, word of mouth spreading between friends, cousins, classmates. Cartridges changed hands, strategies were traded, and suddenly that little world inside the Game Boy wasn't so small anymore. If you listen closely in your memory, you can hear that old startup sound. The logo appears, a cry plays, and a creature you don't quite know yet flashes onto the screen. From there, the quiet idea that almost didn't make it becomes a place you can return to any time you close your eyes and think of that first walk out of Palette Town. When most people think back to their very first step into the Pokémon world, they don't remember the title screen first. They remember standing in that lab, looking at 3 tiny Pokéballs on a table. Inside them are the first big decision and a lifetime of small memories. Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle were not just 3 options. They were a soft introduction to how the entire system of strengths and weaknesses would feel. Grass beats water, water beats fire, fire beats grass, like a gentle circle instead of a complicated chart. Bulbasaur is a small, squat creature with a seed on its back, half animal, half plant. One quiet fact about it is that it's the very first entry in the Pokédex, number 001, the opening note of the whole Kanto symphony. Its design already hints at the idea of synergy, a living being and a plant growing together, sharing life and strength. Charmander feels like the most traditionally dragon-like of the three, even though it's not actually a dragon type in those early days. Its flame tail carries a little bit of lore pressure. We're told that if the fire goes out, its life would end. For a child, that detail makes Charmander feel delicate and precious, as if you're always quietly responsible for keeping that flame alive. Squirtle is small, round, and self-contained, hiding in a sturdy shell whenever things get rough. It combines the idea of a turtle with playful energy, shooting water like a living squirt gun. The shell hints at defense and patience, the opposite of the fiery recklessness you might associate with Charmander. Each of these three early companions has a personality implied by its element. Grass feels steady and nurturing, fire feels bold and risky, water feels adaptable and calm. Without saying it outright, the game lets you express your own style and mood through which one you choose. The first rival battle quietly reinforces this. Your rival picks the starters strong against yours, creating a little natural friction. You're not being punished, just gently challenged, as if the game is saying, you can overcome this, even if the odds are tilted. In those opening hours, the starters grow into small legends in your save file. You remember them learning their first stronger moves, like Vine Whip, Ember, or Water Gun. That small rush of excitement, seeing a damage number or animation jump up, is one of the earliest rewards the game gives you. Evolution adds another layer of sleepy wonder to the starters. Bulbasaur becomes Ivysaur and then Venusaur, the plant on its back turning from a simple bulb into a full-blooming flower. It's like watching slow growth in fast motion, a living symbol of progress every time you level up and keep going. Charmander's line takes the fantasy route. Charmander becomes Charmeleon, and then Charizard, sprouting wings and becoming the kind of dragon-like creature kids might doodle in notebooks. The fact that Charizard is part flying rather than dragon only adds a quiet quirk to its identity, a reminder that things in this world don't always align with your expectations. Squirtle's evolution is about adding layers of armor and power. Wartortle gains fluffy tail extensions and ears, looking slightly more mystical, while Blastoise ends up with cannons emerging from its shell. It's a strange but charming blend of natural and mechanical, suggesting that even gentle water can become a powerful force under pressure. Early on, you start to notice that other trainers latch onto these starters too. Gym leaders don't use them, but kids and NPCs talk about them, hinting at their popularity even inside the game's world. Starters feel rare and special because ordinary wild battles never hand them to you. Then, of course, there's Pikachu. In the original games, it's not your automatic partner, but it very quickly became the face of the entire franchise. A small, yellow electric type with red cheeks and a lightning bolt tail. Doesn't sound like an obvious mascot at first, yet it turned into one of the most recognizable characters on Earth. Part of Pikachu's appeal lies in its simple, rounded design. It's not too detailed, easy to draw, easy to animate, and easy for children to copy on paper. Its cry in the original games is a short, sharp electronic squeal, but your mind fills it with personality anyway. A quieter fact is that Pikachu wasn't always destined to be the star. In some early materials and concepts, Clefairy hovered close to that role, especially in the manga and early ideas. But Pikachu's playful, energetic look, and later its iconic voice in the anime, pulled it naturally into the center. In Pokémon Yellow, the games quietly acknowledge this change. Pikachu follows behind you on the overworld, refusing to stay in its Pokéball. You can check its mood, a small bit of personality that made the world feel more responsive and alive. The rest of the original 151 form a kind of ecosystem. Some are obvious animals, Pidgey, Rattata, Spearow, and Caterpie, feel like slightly fantastical versions of birds and rodents and bugs you might see outside. Others are stranger, like ghosts, animated magnets, or piles of sludge turned into living creatures. You can see different strands of inspiration woven through the designs. There are dinosaurs and prehistoric beasts, like Aerodactyl in the fossil line. There are mythological echoes, like Ninetales drawing from Kitsune legends, and Gyarados channeling the story of a carp becoming a dragon. Even everyday objects get transformed into monsters. Magnemite is like a floating, blinking eyeball made of magnets and screws. Voltorb and Electrode resemble Pokeballs that came to life, their explosive behavior turning a familiar item into something a little unsettling. Some of the 151 play with simple visual jokes. Ekans is snake spelled backwards, and Arbok is cobra with a twist. Muck and Grimer evoke sewage and pollution, taking something unpleasant from real life and making it oddly sympathetic. Others are more subtle. Abra, Kadabra, and Alakazam reference spoon-bending and psychic phenomena, with their spoons and star patterns suggesting mental power. Their steadily increasing special stats made them terrifying threats in the original games, especially when mechanics favored them so strongly. The early bird Pokémon Pidgey, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot embody gradual growth. You meet them right away, just outside your hometown, and they stay relevant for a surprisingly long time. By the time Pidgeot spreads its wings with that dramatic sprite, it feels like a childhood friend who grew up alongside you. Caterpie's journey into Butterfree is one of the simplest but sweetest in the whole roster. You watch it go from a vulnerable caterpillar to a cocoon-like metapod that can barely do anything, and then finally into a bright-winged butterfly. It's like a tiny story of transformation tucked into your team, echoing classic Metamorphosis tales. Weedle, Kakuna, and Beedrill mirror this structure, but with a sharper edge. Beedrill's design feels more aggressive, with its twin drills and insectoid stance. Yet even these sharp details become strangely comforting over time, just more familiar faces in the tall grass. Then there are the normal-type mammals, like Rattata and Raticate. They show up constantly, especially in roots and caves, becoming almost like background noise in your adventure. And yet each time you see that purple shape flash onto the screen, it's a reminder that this world has its own ideas of common wildlife. Some Pokémon blend familiar animals with fantastical twists. Vulpix and Ninetales look like foxes, but their multiple tails and mystical association give them a gentle, fairy tale energy. Growlithe and Arcanine feel like noble dogs, with Arcanine even called a legendary Pokémon in the Pokédex, despite not being part of the legendary trio. You can feel different creative voices behind these designs. Some monsters are cute and cuddly, others are cool and intimidating. A few are deliberately weird or abstract, like Jinx or Mr. Mime, standing on the edge between endearing and unsettling. The first 1-5,000 play with themes of science and experimentation. Paragon is a digital Pokémon, said to be created by humans and capable of entering cyberspace. The existence of Porygon hints that this world isn't just mythical or ancient. It has labs, programmers, and boundaries being pushed in technology. Fossil Pokémon like Omentite, Kabuto, and Aerodactyl connect the modern world of trainers with a forgotten past. You revive them from Helix Fossil, Dome Fossil, or Old Amber, using advanced research machines. In a gentle way, the game introduces ideas of extinction, paleontology, and the revival of long-lost species. Ghost Pokémon bring in another tone entirely. Ghastly, Haunter, and Gengar feel different from everything else, with their abilities to slip through walls and curse opponents. Their presence in the Pokémon Tower, combined with the music, creates one of the earliest eerie moods many players ever felt in a game. Then there are the legendary birds, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres. Each one embodies an element: ice, electricity, fire, and a color palette to match. Finding them isn't just about stumbling upon grass encounters. They live in specific remote locations, turning them into little mythic quests of their own. Mewtwo and Mew sit at the top of this early pantheon. Mewtwo is the product of genetic manipulation, a powerful and angry psychic being cloned from Mew. Mewtwo in contrast, is tiny and almost cat-like, said to contain the DNA of all Pokémon, a soft suggestion that it might be the origin of everything. That contrast between Mew and Mewtwo brings a quiet sci-fi thread into the story. The idea that humans tried to control and amplify power, only to create something they couldn't fully handle. It's a surprisingly heavy theme, wrapped in simple sprites and short Pokédex entries. Throughout all of this, the Pokédex acts as a little encyclopedia of the 151. Every entry adds a line or two of flavor, from how far Dodrio can run, to how Vaporeon can melt into water, to how Cubone wears the skull of its mother. Some descriptions are cute, others are strangely dark, but together they turn these creatures from mere data into living myths. When you step back and look at the full set of 151, it feels almost perfectly balanced in how varied it is. There are cute mascots, fierce warriors, mysterious legends, and comedic oddities. Enough variety that every child could find a few personal favorites and feel like they had discovered their own little corner of the Pokéverse. Your own team, made from 6 of these 151, becomes a kind of self-portrait. Some people favor heavy hitters and dragons, others love underdogs and unconventional choices. Over time, your choices say as much about you as they do about the monsters themselves. Lying in the dark now, thinking back on them, you might remember specific sounds or animations. The way a Pokéball wobbled 3 times before a capture, the slightly harsher cry of a certain wild encounter, the flash of a critical hit. Each of these tiny sensory memories is tied to one or more of those 151 creatures, stitched into your brain like quiet constellations. You don't need to recall them all by name. You don't have to list their types, stats, or evolutions in your head. It's enough to know that somewhere in that old save file, your chosen 6 are still waiting, tiny sprites frozen in time, ready to battle again whenever you decide to return. And as your breathing slows, those 6 are just part of a bigger picture. A world filled with 151 small beings, each with its own story, its own facts and quirks and little secrets. A world that, even after hundreds more Pokémon were added, still feels complete in its own compact, nostalgic way. On the surface, the earliest Pokémon games feel simple. You press A, choose a move, watch the health bar slide down, and repeat until someone faints. But under that calm, gray screen exterior, a whole tangle of strange little rules and bugs is quietly humming away. One of the most surprising details is how critical hits worked back then. Today, we expect crit rates to depend mostly on moves or items, but in those early games, your speed stat had a big say. The faster a Pokémon was, the higher its chance to land a critical hit, meaning some quick Pokémon felt absurdly lucky. This created moments that felt unfair without you knowing why. A fast Pokémon might land crit after crit, and you just assume the game was being cheap, or that you were unlucky. In reality, hidden math was quietly nudging the odds in favor of speed. Moves that raised critical hit ratio added another twist. Slash, for example, was especially dangerous on fast Pokémon, because their already high crit chance was pushed even further. What felt like a strong move was secretly being amplified by the way the engine handled speed. Then there was Focus Energy, a move whose description promised power. The text said it would raise your chance of critical hits, suggesting a big offensive boost, but due to a small programming error, it actually did the opposite and lowered your crit chance. So players who believed in that description and used Focus Energy were unknowingly handicapping themselves. You can imagine some kid late at night trusting the move and wondering why everything suddenly felt weaker. It's a tiny example of how the game's calm surface sometimes hid a very different reality underneath. Accuracy and evasion had their own quirks. Players often thought of moves as simply reliable or unreliable, but the code behind them was more complex. Moves like Thunder, Blizzard, and Fire Blast carried low accuracy on paper, but could feel wildly swingy in practice. Sand Attack was another quiet troublemaker. A single use could send even a strong Pokémon into a spiral of missed moves and frustration. The game never showed you the exact numbers, only the vague message that your accuracy had fallen, leaving the rest to your imagination. Status moves like Double Team played on this same invisible battlefield. Boosting your evasion made opponents whiff again and again, sometimes turning a simple fight into a long, drawn-out dance. For someone just trying to finish a late-night session before bed, it could feel like the world was conspiring against them. The AI in these games added its own flavor of oddity. Some trainers seemed to spam strange moves, like going for status or setup when a straightforward attack would do. This wasn't because they were trying to be clever, but because their logic followed simple, rigid rules. There were cases where the AI prioritized certain move types regardless of context. A trainer might use a weak move over and over because the game's internal weighting told it that move was preferred. From your side of the screen, it just looked like the opponent was weirdly obsessed with growl or tail whip. You might remember battles where enemies used ineffective status moves on already statused targets, paralyzing a paralyzed Pokémon, putting something to sleep when it was already asleep. These little missteps were part of the charm. It made the world feel less perfectly optimized, more like a slightly clumsy opponent learning alongside you. The catching system had its own hidden rules. Players would throw Pokeballs at full health Pokémon and sometimes get lucky, sometimes not. Behind the scenes, a formula considered the Pokémon's species, current HP, and the type of ball you used. Putting a Pokémon to sleep or paralyzing it made a big difference. Even if the game never spelled out the exact bonus, you could feel that status conditions helped your chances. Kids slowly pieced this together through rumors, schoolyard advice, and late-night experiments in tall grass. The Safari Zone was a special case entirely. There, you couldn't battle the wild Pokémon at all. Instead, you could throw rocks, bait, or balls. The game told you almost nothing about what these actions actually did, leaving you to guess and test. Throwing a rock made a Pokémon more likely to flee but easier to catch. Bait did the opposite, making it stay longer but harder to capture. Most players just threw balls and hoped, never fully grasping why some captures felt impossible. Even the way balls shook told a story. One shake, two shakes, three, and then either the satisfying click or the sudden escape. That tiny animation turned a hidden calculation into a suspenseful ritual every single time. Stat progression worked differently too. Instead of a modern EV/IV system, the early games used stat experience and simpler individual values. Every time you defeated opponents, your stats silently grew in ways the game never explained. Because you got stat experience from what you battled, your team's strength subtly reflected your journey. If you fought lots of fast Pokémon, your own team could end up a bit faster over time. It was a faint, invisible imprint of your path through the world. Types and their interactions weren't quite the same as they are now. Back then, Dark and Steel types didn't exist yet, and Psychic types were incredibly strong. The balance leaned heavily in their favor because very few things resisted or countered them properly. Ghost-type moves were supposed to counter Psychic, but due to a quirk in the data, some Ghost moves didn't interact with Psychic exactly as intended. Combine that with powerful Psychic attacks like Psychic itself, and you had a type that dominated both casual and competitive play. Critical hits also ignored some of your stat changes. If your attack was lowered, a crit could bypass that reduction and hit as if you were unaffected. It made critical hits feel like sudden bursts of hope in tough battles, even though you had no control over when they appeared. Badges had more effects than they seemed to. They didn't just allow obedience or use of certain moves outside battle. Some badges quietly boosted the stats of your Pokémon by small percentages, making you stronger simply for progressing. You never saw these boosts spelled out in a menu. You just felt that your team seemed more capable after beating a gym and receiving its badge. It gave victories a subtle, lasting weight beyond the visible badge icons on your trainer card. Partial trapping moves like Wrap, Bind, and Fire Spin had their own peculiar behavior. In those games, if a faster Pokémon used them, it could lock an opponent into a kind of soft stun, preventing normal retaliation. It turned what sounded like a minor annoyance into a surprisingly powerful control tool. Being caught in a Wrap or Fire Spin animation over and over could feel strangely helpless. You'd watch your HP tick down, unable to act, hoping for the move to end. For tired players, late at night, it felt like being stuck in a looping dream you couldn't quite wake up from. There were even quirks in how moves interacted with the substitute mechanic. Substitute blocked some status effects and damage in ways that weren't always intuitive. It created a feeling of mystery around whether a move would hit you or the doll, and what would slip through. Some moves had hidden side effects or oddities in their data. For example, a handful of moves had incorrect descriptions or behaved slightly differently than their text suggested. Without official patch notes, players simply discovered these differences over time and passed them around as quiet secrets. Glitches formed a whole secret layer beneath the already complex rules. Missing Caligula, item duplication, and the old man glitch all came from the way the game reused memory. What was meant as a clever space-saving trick occasionally opened a door into unintended spaces. Encountering missing gnomes could scramble your Hall of Fame, extend your item list, and create strange graphic artifacts. Yet for many kids, it felt like discovering a ghost in the machine, a forbidden path you could take if you knew the ritual. Even this became part of the cozy mythos of the game, whispered about on playgrounds and in early internet forums. Other small glitches were less dramatic but equally telling. Sprites flickered strangely, trainers appeared where they shouldn't, or music behaved oddly after certain events. Each little crack in the game's facade hinted that there was a complicated, fragile structure underneath. Despite all of these quirks, or maybe because of them, the games kept their quiet charm. They didn't feel broken in everyday play. They felt alive and slightly unpredictable. The bugs and oddities blended into the experience, turning Kanto into a place where you never quite knew what would happen next. Rumors grew naturally around these hidden rules. Kids would swear that pressing certain buttons during a Pokeball throw raised catch rates, or that specific nicknames boosted stats. In reality, these were just patterns our brains made from random successes and failures. Sometimes the myths lined up accidentally with the truth. Someone might insist that status conditions helped catching, and in that case they'd be right. But they'd often wrap that correct bit inside a whole ritual of extra steps that had no actual effect. Trying to decode the game's secrets became its own side activity. Players wrote notes, tested theories, and compared experiences long before data mining or official guides were widespread. In a way, everyone became a tiny researcher, exploring not just Kanto itself, but the unseen rules that made Kanto behave. Lying in bed now, thinking back, it's calming to realize how much was hidden beneath those simple menus and chiptunes. Critical hit calculations, badge boosts, glitch encounters, AI quirks, Safari Zone odds, all quietly running behind the scenes. You never had to see any of it to enjoy the journey. It was enough to feel that the world had depth, even if you couldn't see all the way to the bottom. The beauty of those early games is that they worked on two levels. On the surface, they were straightforward stories about a kid and their Pokémon traveling from town to town. Underneath, a tangled web of code and numbers turned that story into something that could surprise you again and again. As you drift towards sleep, you don't need to remember the formulas or the exact bugs. All that really lingers is the feeling. Battles that felt oddly tense, catches that felt miraculously lucky, strange events that became legends among friends. The early games were quietly imperfect, and that imperfection made them feel strangely human. And somewhere, in that quiet hum of hidden rules and glitches, the world of Pokémon felt less like a rigid machine and more like a dream running on a tiny cartridge. A dream full of sharp edges and soft music, faulty focus energy and overpowered psychic types, missed moves and miracle crits. A dream that, once you close your eyes, keeps running peacefully in the background of your memory. When you think back to the world of the first Pokémon games, you might not remember exact coordinates or detailed layouts. You remember feelings tied to places, a small house with red roof tiles, a patch of tall grass, a pier reaching into the water. Kanto's map is simple by modern standards, but every town and route holds a very specific kind of quiet. Everything begins in a tiny settlement at the bottom of the map. Pallet Town is almost empty, Just a few houses, some trees, and a lab. It feels like the edge of the world, a place where nothing much happens until you decide to pick up the Game Boy and move. Your home is a single screen with a bed, a TV, and a staircase. You can't do much in it, and that's the point. It gently nudges you to step outside. The real story starts the moment you walk out the door and feel that little shift in the music. There's something soothing about how small Pallet Town is. You can walk around the entire place in a few seconds, talk to everyone, and know you've seen all of it. It's like a sandbox where nothing dangerous can happen, a safe harbor you can always imagine returning to. To the north, beyond a short strip of grass, waits Viridian City. The first time you reach it, you're not strong enough to stay for long. You're there mostly to fetch a parcel and go back. This small fetch quest makes the path between Pallet and Viridian feel familiar, like a walking route between home and a nearby town in real life. Viridian City's music is calm, but a little more serious than Pallet's. There's a gym here, but it's mysteriously closed at first, as if the city is keeping a secret from you. You walk past it, unable to enter, and the unanswered question hangs there quietly in your mind for hours of gameplay. Leaving Viridian to the north, you enter your first true route. The path bends and rises, leading you toward a gatehouse and your first real obstacle, Viridian Forest. You meet more trainers here, each with a few bug Pokémon, like fellow beginners testing their first teams. Viridian Forest itself feels bigger than it really is. The screen fills with tall trees and looping paths, giving the illusion of a deep woodland. The music shifts to something slightly mysterious, yet still gentle enough that it never feels truly scary. Wild Caterpie and Weedle flash onto the screen, their cries quick and sharp. Sometimes Pikachu appears, rare and exciting, its sprite small but distinctive among the greens and browns. The encounter rate is high enough that every few steps, you're reminded that this forest is alive. Emerging from Viridian Forest into Pewter City feels like stepping out of a tunnel into fresh air. The town looks solid and stone-colored, fitting for a place ruled by rock-type Pokémon. Brock's gym stands ready, a straight path from the entrance, almost like the city is quietly telling you, this is your next milestone. Pewter is where many players fight their first truly nerve-wracking battle. The gym is not complicated, but the type matchup can be brutal if you chose certain starters. Because of that, the town becomes attached in memory to grinding, to training in the nearby grass, and to finally overcoming a tough hurdle. To the east, the road slopes down toward Mount Moon. The route has trainers, grass patches, and the quiet promise of something larger ahead. You buy a Magikarp from an overeager salesman if you're curious, carrying around a weak fish that might someday become legendary. Mount Moon is dim and echoing, lit only by the vague glow of your imagination on the Game Boy screen. Zubat and Geodude appear constantly, turning each step into a small decision: push further or retreat. You find fossils here, guarded by a super nerd, who forces you to choose between Helix and Dome. That fossil choice gently ties your journey to the ancient past. You don't see the results until much later in Cinnabar, which gives the decision a lingering weight. For a long stretch, you carry a piece of old life in your bag, a reminder that this world has a history beyond what you see. Leaving Mount Moon, you find yourself near Cerulean City. The water around it and the blue roofs match its name, giving it a cool, refreshing feel after the cave's darkness. Misty's gym waits, filled with swimmers and water types, shifting the tone from hard rock to flowing currents. Cerulean is also where you first cross Nugget Bridge. The golden reward at the end makes it feel like a small adventure within the adventure. You battle a line of trainers, each one a stepping stone toward a glittering prize and the grassy roots beyond. North of Cerulean, the world opens up a bit. You can wander through patches of grass, meet new Pokémon, and peek into hidden corners leading to places like Bill's house. Bill himself lives on a tiny stretch of land overlooking the water, a programmer partly merged with a Pokémon by a teleportation mishap. That little house above the cape is one of Kanto's quietest spots. The music stops being about tension and becomes a simple, cozy background loop. Helping Bill and receiving the SS ticket feels less like a quest and more like assisting an odd, friendly neighbor. Heading south from Cerulean eventually takes you toward Vermilion City. To get there, you pass through tunnels, guardhouses, and small side paths that make the region feel interconnected. Along the way, walkers and fishermen hint at how everyday people live in this world, just traveling or working with their Pokémon. Vermilion City sits by the sea, its docks stretching into gentle waves. The music here carries a slightly upbeat energy, fitting for a bustling port. The SS Anne waits as a temporary home, filled with trainers, cabins, and items tucked into corners. Boarding the ship feels like stepping into a different kind of space. You're no longer just traversing land. You're walking through narrow corridors, hearing the ship's music softly loop. Each cabin is a tiny world with rich trainers, seasick sailors, and rival encounters turning the boat into a mini dungeon. At the end of the ship's journey, you meet the captain, seasick and hunched over a trash can. You rub his back, receive the cut HM, and suddenly the entire region opens a bit more. The SS Anne then quietly sails away, never to return in that save file, like a dream you can only visit once. Vermilion's gym reflects its leader perfectly. Electric fences, switches hidden in trash cans, and a brash gym leader who talks about war. The layout is simple but annoying enough to stick in your memory, especially if you spent time checking every bin. From Vermilion, the world branches again. You can cut down small trees now, revealing shortcuts, hidden items, and secret paths. Those tiny shrubs become symbols of progress, obstacles that once blocked you and now simply fall away. As you move on, you eventually circle back through familiar territory, heading toward new cities like Lavender Town. The route there passes by open fields and underground tunnels, with trainers scattered like small challenges along the roadside. The gradual shift in tone prepares you for one of the most distinctive locations in the entire game. Lavender Town feels different the moment you arrive. The music changes to a slow, haunting melody, sparse and echoing, unlike anything you've heard so far. The buildings are fewer, the color palette subdued, and looming over everything is the Pokémon Tower. The tower functions as a graveyard, a rare admission that Pokémon can die and be mourned. Inside, channelers roam the floors, possessed by ghosts or calling out in eerie fragments of dialogue. Wild encounters include Ghastly and Haunter, their flickering sprites and strange moves adding to the atmosphere. Before you can fully explore the tower, you're blocked by invisible ghosts. You need the Sylph Scope from Celadon City to see their true forms. This means Lavender lingers in the back of your mind while you continue your journey elsewhere, waiting for you like an unfinished dream. West of Lavender lies Celadon City, lush and expansive. It feels bigger than previous towns. There's a huge department store, a mansion, a game corner, and narrow side alleys. The layered buildings and hidden back entrances make it feel like a busy living place. Celadon's department store is like a small universe of items. You can buy stones to evolve certain Pokémon, powerful TMs, and assorted goods that weren't easily available before. Riding the elevator between floors becomes a calming little ritual, a pause between battles. The game corner adds a layer of playful vice to the region. You walk among rows of slot machines, NPCs absorbed in gambling, lights blinking in patterns. Behind the fun facade, a secret base hides beneath the floor, accessed through a spinning tile maze once you locate the hidden switch. That hidden Team Rocket base under Celadon is one of Kanto's most memorable surprises. The quiet city of shops and tea houses contains a criminal underworld right under your feet. Spinning tiles carry you in forced directions, turning the base into both a puzzle and a metaphor for being pulled into larger events. North of Celadon, tucked away, is a small house where you receive a crucial move, Fly. Once you teach it to a winged Pokémon, the map changes forever. What once required long routes and caves can now be covered in seconds, making cities feel more connected than ever. When you eventually return to Lavender with the Sylph Scope, the tower reveals itself fully. The ghosts now appear as Ghastly, Haunter, and eventually the spirit of a Marowak. Clearing the tower and calming that restless soul is one of the game's softest emotional moments. After that, Lavender's music feels less like a threat and more like a memory. It's still sad, still wistful, but no longer menacing. You've acknowledged the loss and helped bring peace, and the town settles into a quiet, respectful calm. Further west, beyond long bridges and winding routes, lies Saffron City. This is the largest and most central urban place in Kanto, with more buildings and people than anywhere else. For a while, it's blocked off by guards complaining of thirst, forcing you to circle around it until you find a way in. Once you gain access, Saffron feels like a crossroads. There are 2 gyms here, one official and one unofficial fighting dojo. Silphco's massive building towers over everything, a corporate giant at the heart of the city. Silphco's is a maze of teleporter pads, locked doors, and uniformed enemies. The building is full of repeated floor layouts that can blur together when you're tired. Stepping on teleporters and reappearing in new rooms becomes a strangely hypnotic loop. At the top, you confront the leader of Team Rocket again. The battle feels like a climax, not just because of the strong Pokémon, but because of all the floors you climbed to reach him. When he finally leaves, the building returns to being a peaceful office, filled with grateful workers instead of hostile grunts. The psychic gym run by Sabrina adds another layer of unease. Teleporter tiles send you from room to room, all decorated similarly, making it feel like a small psychic labyrinth. Her team is strong, her dialogue serious, and her city's role as a psychic hub makes Saffron feel vaguely intimidating. Moving south from Saffron takes you toward Fuchsia City. To get there, you can walk along long seaside routes, cycling paths, and patches of tall grass. Route 12 and its neighboring routes are dotted with fishermen, Snorlax blocking the way, and gentle waves lapping at the piers. The sleeping Snorlax in the middle of the road is another small monument. Until you receive the Poké flute, it acts as a living roadblock. Waking it up turns the screen into a brief, funny battle with a yawning giant who simply wants to sleep. Fuchsia City has its own unique flavor. There's a zoo-like area where Pokémon are on display, hinting at a world where people observe them as well as battle them. The Safari Zone entrance sits at the back, a gate to a strange, time-limited expedition. Inside the Safari Zone, the rules change. You don't battle, you throw bait, rocks, and balls. Every step counts down, turning exploration into a careful balance between curiosity and efficiency. The layout of the zone is sprawling, with multiple areas and hidden items. Important objects like the Surf HM and the gold teeth are tucked away deep inside. Finding them turns the Safari Zone into more than just a catching ground. It's a key to further progress in the region. Northwest, beyond Cycling Road and a series of routes, lies Celadon again, waiting like a familiar anchor point. You realize how Kanto's paths loop and fold back on themselves. The region is not a straight line, but a web of streets and shortcuts. Further south, when the time is right, you travel to Cinnabar Island. You reach it by surfing over open ocean, the music shifting to a calm, repetitive tune that feels almost meditative. Sometimes Tentacool interrupt your journey, but between battles, it's just you, your Pokémon, and the waves. Cinnabar is a volcanic island with a lab, a gym, and the remains of a mysterious mansion. The Pokémon lab is where your old fossils are revived into ancient creatures, connecting your Moon choice to the present. Inside the mansion, diaries tell a fragmented story about experiments, Mew, and the creation of Mewtwo. The mansion's burned-out rooms, broken walls, and scattered notes give it a haunted feel. You flip switches hidden in statues to open new paths, like solving a quiet puzzle inside a forgotten research site. Reading about Mewtwo's birth in this place adds a deeper shadow to an otherwise colorful adventure. Once you've cleared the region's gyms and challenges, one area remains, Victory Road and Indigo Plateau. Victory Road is a cave full of strong trainers, boulders to push, and high-level wild encounters. It's less about getting lost, and more about proving endurance and readiness. At the end of all that effort stands Indigo Plateau, a small but imposing building at the region's far edge. Inside, the Pokémon League waits, carved into a series of rooms lined with statues and sliding doors. Each room holds a member of the Elite Four, each one themed, each one a final test. The plateau feels like standing at the edge of Kanto. There's nowhere higher to climb, nowhere tougher to challenge. And yet, when you finish, the map doesn't vanish. You can still fly back to Pallet Town, back to the forest, back to the quiet places. Thinking of Kanto's map now is like unfolding an old paper you kept in a desk drawer for years. The towns, routes, caves, and towers come back not as coordinates, but as moods. Safe Pallet, eerie lavender, bustling saffron, sunlit vermilion, lonely cinnabar, all of them stitched together by thin pixel roads. You don't need to remember every turn or every route number. It's enough to recall how it felt to walk those straight lines and winding paths, hearing the music change as the tiles did. Kanto isn't a huge world by modern standards, but in memory it stretches out endlessly, a place you can always visit just by closing your eyes. Your first real human opponent in Kanto is the boy next door. In the English versions of Red, Blue, and Yellow, the default name the game suggests for him is Blue. A small fact, in Japan his counterpart is often called Green, matching the original Japanese game titles Red and Green. He isn't just some random kid. The game and the manuals tell you he's Professor Oak's grandson. That small detail explains why he's always one step ahead, and why he appears in so many key locations. It also quietly ties your personal story to the professor's family, as if you're part of the same small-town circle. When you pick your starter in Oak's lab, the rival will always pick the one with a type advantage over yours. If you choose Bulbasaur, he takes Charmander. If you choose Charmander, he takes Squirtle. If you choose Squirtle, he takes Bulbasaur. That's not a coin flip. It's hard-coded into the game, making him your natural opposite from the very beginning. You can run into him on Route 22, even before you beat the first gym. If you head west from Viridian City instead of straight to Pewter, he appears and challenges you with a slightly upgraded team. It's one of the earliest examples of the game quietly rewarding exploration with a tougher optional battle. Across the whole game, he fights you multiple times in fixed places: Route 22, Cerulean City, the SSN, Pokémon Tower, Silph, Victory Road, and finally the League. Each time his team grows, picks up new Pokémon, and evolves them, mirroring your own progress. By the final fight, his team is always 6 Pokémon strong, and it always includes a powerful flying type like Pidgeot. At the very end, when you reach the Pokémon League, the game tells you someone else has just become champion. That someone is him, standing at the top of the Indigo Plateau waiting for you. This makes him the first in-game champion you ever fight, and canonically the shortest-lived one, because you dethrone him as soon as you win. Outside of the rival, the region is shaped by gym leaders. In Kanto, there are 8 official gyms, each representing a type focus and awarding a specific badge and TM. These leaders are Brock, Misty, Liddart Surge, Erica, Koga, Sabrina, Blaine, and the mysterious final leader in Viridian City. Brock in Pewter specializes in Rock-type Pokémon. In Red and Blue, he uses Geodude and Onix, both Rock-ground type, which makes life hard for Charmander starters. When you beat him, he gives you the Boulder Badge and TM34 Bide, a move that stores damage and returns it in a burst. Misty in Cerulean City is known as the tomboyish mermaid in early materials. In Red and Blue, she uses Staryu and Starmie, both water type, with Starmie being water/kick. Winning against her earns you the Cascade Badge and TM11 Bubble Beam, a surprisingly strong early-game water move. The next major city, Gym, is in Vermilion, run by Let Surge. His title is the Lightning American, and he uses electric-type Pokémon like Voltorb, Pikachu, and Raichu. He gives you the Thunder Badge and TM24 Thunderbolt, one of the most reliable electric attacks in the game. One odd detail about Lert Surge is his dialogue about war. He mentions that electric Pokémon saved him during an unnamed war, hinting at a darker background for the Pokémon world. That single line spawned countless fan theories about what conflict he might be talking about. Erica leads the gym in Celadon City. Her gym is filled exclusively with female trainers in the original games, mostly using grass-type Pokémon. Beating her earns you the Rainbow Badge and TM21 Mega Drain, a move that lets your Pokémon heal half the damage it deals. Erica herself is described as a lover of nature and traditional culture, often seen wearing a kimono-like outfit in artwork. Her team includes Pokémon like Victreble, Tangela, and Vileplume in red and blue. Celadon's flower-focused gym and her calm dialogue reinforce her peaceful, almost sleepy personality. Koga runs the gym in Fuchsia City, specializing in poison-type Pokémon. He uses Pokémon like Coughing, Muck, and Wheezing, and in yellow, his team leans harder into that theme. His badge is the Soul Badge, and he gives you TM06 Toxic, a move that badly poisons the opponent and increases damage each turn. A later fact, relevant beyond the first games. In Gold and Silver, Koga is promoted from gym leader to a member of the Elite Four. This small change shows that characters in this world can advance in their careers between generations. His daughter, Janine, takes over his gym in Yoto, continuing his ninja and poison-type legacy. Sabrina leads the Saffron City Gym and specializes in psychic-type Pokémon. Her team includes Kadabra, Mr. Mime, Venomoth, and Alakazam in red and blue, making her one of the toughest opponents in Kanto. Defeating her gives you the Marsh Badge and TM46 Psywave in red-blue, though Psywave itself is a somewhat unpredictable move. Her gym is full of teleportation tiles that warp you from room to room. This layout, plus her serious, almost cold personality, reinforces the sense that psychic types are hard to predict or control. In the anime and supplemental material, Sabrina is often portrayed as having strong, almost overwhelming psychic powers that isolate her from others. Blaine is the gym leader of Cinnabar Island and focuses on fire-type Pokémon. His gym originally uses a quiz mechanic, answer questions correctly to avoid battling trainers before him. When you defeat him, you receive the Volcano Badge and TM38 Fire Blast, one of the strongest fire moves available in Kanto. In early artwork, Blaine appears with sunglasses and a lab coat-like outfit, giving him a scientist vibe. This matches the fact that Cinnabar Island also houses the Pokémon Lab, where fossils are revived. There's a quiet implication that Blaine may be connected to research, not just battling. The final gym is back in Viridian City, the same place whose gym was mysteriously closed at the beginning. Late in the game, you discover that the leader is Giovanni, the boss of Team Rocket. He uses ground-type Pokémon, including Dugtrio, Nidoqueen, Nidoking, and Rhydon in red and blue. Beating Giovanni earns you the Earth Badge and TM27 Fisher, a one-hit KO move with very low accuracy. After you defeat him, Giovanni disbands Team Rocket and disappears from the gym. The Viridian Gym is left leaderless, making it the only gym in Kanto without an active leader by the end of the story. Outside of gyms, Kanto is populated by NPCs who each carry small facts about the world. Nurse Joy at every Pokémon Center is technically multiple different characters, but they all share the same sprite and role. In the anime, they're treated as a large extended family, each one working in a different town. Mart clerks, fishermen, hikers, and bug catchers all repeat their archetypes across the region. Even though they look identical, their lines and Pokémon teams vary, hinting at different little lives. They teach you bits of information about items, moves, and locations through casual dialogue. There's a famous old man in Viridian City who teaches you how to catch Pokémon. After he shows you the catching tutorial, certain memory values in the game get reused, which is part of how the missing gnome glitch becomes possible along Cinnabar's coast. That means the friendly tutorial NPC is indirectly connected to one of the most iconic glitches in gaming history. Bill, the inventor of the PC storage system, lives in a small house north of Cerulean. In the game, you first meet him transformed into a Pokémon due to a teleporter accident, and you help restore him. His PC is the default storage system you use, and later games show that new regions have their own storage system creators, like Lynette and Bach. The Name Raider in Lavender Town plays a quiet but important role. He's the only in-game character who can change the nickname of your Pokémon if you caught them yourself. If you received a Pokémon via trade, he refuses to rename it, reinforcing the idea that traded Pokémon carry their original trainer's identity. There's also a move deleter in later games, but in red, blue, and yellow, no such character exists. Once an HM move is taught, it can't be forgotten by normal means. This creates a subtle planning puzzle, encouraging you to think carefully about which Pokémon will be your HM carriers. In Celadon's Game Corner, Team Rocket operates under the cover of slot machines. An NPC hints that the poster on the wall is suspicious, and pressing the switch behind it opens a secret staircase. This ties ordinary gamblers and shady activity together, suggesting Kanto has both wholesome and darker corners. The chairman of the Pokémon fan club in Vermilion City is another small but memorable NPC. If you listen to him talk about his favorite Rapidash, he rambles on for multiple text boxes. After patiently listening, he rewards you with a bike voucher, effectively turning your time and attention into a key gameplay upgrade. In Fuchsia City, you find a warden who has lost his dentures. Until you return his gold teeth, his speech appears as unreadable garble. When you give them back, he thanks you by granting HM04 strength, which lets you move boulders in caves and buildings. There are also in-game trades scattered around Kanto. You can trade, for example, an Abra for a Mr. Mime on Route 2, or a Spearow for a Farfetch'd in Vermilion City. These trades often offer Pokémon that are rare or hard to catch otherwise, giving you a reason to engage with NPCs more deeply. Another small fact, some of the traded Pokémon have nicknames and unique IDs. They gain boosted experience compared to your own captures, making them level up faster. That bonus is the game's way of rewarding you for connecting with other trainers, even if they're just AI characters. All of these people, rivals, gym leaders, scientists, gamblers, old men, club chairmen, fill Kanto with human presence. Each one carries at least one small fact, one mechanic, or one piece of lore. Together, they make the region feel lived in, not just a map for battles. And when you think back now, half asleep, it's not just the Pokémon you remember. It's Brock and his rock wall of a team, Misty in her water gym pool, Late Surge talking about war, Erica surrounded by flowers, Sabrina staring through you, Blaine's quiz machines, Giovanni's double life, and that boy from next door who always seems to arrive first. They're all still waiting in their little 2D rooms, frozen in place, ready to say the same lines again the moment you press A. One of the simplest objects in Pokémon is also one of the most important, the Pokéball. In the original games, you start with none, and Professor Oak gives you your first 5 after delivering his parcel. That means the actual catching mechanic only truly begins once you've already taken a few steps into the world. In Kanto, there are only a few basic ball types. There's the regular Pokéball, then stronger versions like the Great Ball and Ultra Ball, the special Safari Ball inside the Safari Zone, and the one-of-a-kind Master Ball you receive from Silph Co. Later generations add many more, but in red, blue, and yellow, those are the core options. The Master Ball has a very simple fact attached to it. In normal gameplay, it never fails. No matter what level the wild Pokémon is, no matter how much HP it has, if you throw a Master Ball, the catch is guaranteed. Because of that, many players save it for something like Mewtwo, using it as their final safety net. Pokéballs and their stronger versions don't just differ by flavor text. Behind the scenes, each one has a different catch modifier built into the formula the game uses. The Pokéball is the baseline, the Great Ball improves your odds, and the Ultra Ball improves them even more, especially useful for high-level or hard-to-catch species. The Safari Ball is technically its own separate thing. You can't use your regular stock of balls in the Safari Zone. You're given a limited number of Safari Balls when you pay the entrance fee. These balls have their own catch values and are used together with the bait and rock mechanics, creating a unique, slightly mysterious system. The simple 3-wobble animation hides all that math. Each time the ball shakes, it's the game stepping through parts of its catch formula. If it shakes 3 times and clicks, the catch succeeded. If it pops open, you never see the numbers, only the result. Once you've caught a Pokémon, the game has to store it somewhere. Your party can only hold 6 at a time, so extras are sent to the PC system. In red, blue, and yellow, the PC storage is split into multiple numbered boxes. each with a fixed capacity. Your party appears under your name, but the main storage is labeled as Bill's PC. That's a direct reference to Bill, the programmer you help north of Cerulean City. The game quietly ties game mechanics to characters, turning a menu into part of the world's lore. Each PC box in Gen 1 can hold a limited number of Pokémon. Once a box is full, any new catches will fail to store unless you manually switch boxes at the PC. This leads to a specific quirk. If your current box is full and you catch something, you're warned, and the new Pokémon is simply not stored at all. Saving is required when you switch boxes in those early games. Every time you choose a different box, the game forces a save and plays the save animation. This design choice reflects the hardware's limitations and the need to carefully manage memory. The PC doesn't just store Pokémon, it also holds items. There's a separate item storage within the PC where you can deposit or withdraw items that don't fit in your bag. This is important because your bag in Gen 1 has a hard limit on how many different item types it can carry at once. In red, blue, and yellow, you can only hold a set number of distinct item slots in your bag, not counting key items tucked into a separate part of the menu. That means if you pick up too many different things, you may see the "no more room for items" message. To pick up new items, you often have to deposit old TMs, stones, or unused items into the PC. The item list is ordered in a very simple way. The game just keeps adding new items to the next free slot. There's no built-in sorting, so if you use and discard items in random order, your bag can become a jumble. Many players remember scrolling up and down through potions, repels, escape ropes, and TMs in a slightly chaotic inventory. Technical machines, or TMs, are another small wonder of the everyday Kanto experience. In these games, TMs are single-use. Once you teach a move to a Pokémon, that TM is gone forever. This turns each TM into a kind of one-time decision, making you think about whether to hold on to it or use it right away. In the original Kanto games, there are 50 numbered TMs. Some can be bought in places like the Celadon department store, while others are found only once in specific locations or given as gym rewards. Because of this, certain moves exist in very limited supply, adding a quiet strategy layer to move selection. Hidden machines, or HMs, work differently. Once obtained, an HM can be used to teach its move to multiple Pokémon without disappearing. In Kanto, the HMs are Cut, Fly, Surf, Strength, and Flash. Each HM has an overworld function. Cut clears small trees, Fly lets you travel between visited towns, Surf moves you over water, Strength pushes boulders, and Flash lights up dark caves. This dual nature battle move and map tool connects your team's moveset choice to how you explore the world. One catch is that HM moves can't normally be forgotten in Gen 1. If you teach Cut to a Pokémon, it will keep Cut unless something very special happens in later games or via glitches. That's why many players designated HM slaves or specific team members to carry the more utility-focused moves. Healing and status items form another layer of everyday detail. Potions, super potions, hyper potions, and full restores each cover different HP amounts, gradually becoming available as you progress. There are also status cures like antidotes for poison, paralyze heals, awakenings, and burn heals, plus full heals that cure multiple conditions. Kanto's Poké Marts are where you pick up most of these. Each mart's stock changes based on the town's place in the progression, adding more powerful items as you reach later cities. A small, easily missed fact: some items are only purchasable in specific places, like certain TMs in Celadon's department store or unique drinks in the rooftop vending machines. The rooftop vending machines in Celadon are more than flavor. You can buy fresh water, soda pop, and lemonade there. Each one heals different amounts of HP, and giving these drinks to the guards in the gatehouses is what finally opens Saffron City's gates to you. Repels are another subtle tool. Using a repel prevents wild encounters with Pokémon lower level than your leading party member. This allows you to walk through caves or routes with fewer interruptions, but still get encounters with high-level wild Pokémon if they exist in the area. Escape ropes offer a simple shortcut out of caves. Use one inside a cave or dungeon, and you're taken back to the entrance. For tired players who have been exploring for a long time, that item is almost like a bedtime button, letting you return to a safe center quickly. Held items, as a full mechanic, don't exist yet in red, blue, and yellow. Pokémon don't carry berry-like items or attack-boosting gear the way they do in later generations. The only held item you really see is Pikachu's light ball conceptually in later games, but in Kanto's first versions, that idea simply isn't there. Money in Kanto follows its own quiet rules. You earn it by defeating trainers and can lose half your current money when you black out after losing a battle. The trainer card shows your current cash, number of badges, and playtime, turning your save file into a little record of your journey. Playtime itself is tracked in hours and minutes. Once you cross 99 hours and 59 minutes, the counter stops and stays at that maximum. Many longtime players have save files fixed eternally at 99.59, a quiet sign of just how many late nights they spent wandering Kanto. Another quiet, everyday detail is the in-game clock's absence. Unlike later generations, red, blue, and yellow don't track real-time day or night. The world is always lit, always the same time of day, no matter when you play. Despite that, your own clock mattered. Some people remember playing early in the morning before school, others remember lying in bed at night, using the dim glow of a Game Boy screen. Your personal schedule became the game's day-night cycle, even though the sprites never changed. Even the simple save function is part of Kanto's everyday weight. You can save almost anywhere outside of battle, with the game asking "save the game" and showing the progress text. For many players, that little save jingle became the sound of putting the adventure to bed for the night. All these small systems, balls that wobble, boxes that fill, bags that overflow, TMs that disappear, HMs that stick, add up to a quiet tapestry of rules. You interact with them constantly, without always thinking about them. But they shape the pace, rhythm, and little rituals of your journey as surely as battles and gym fights. When you look back now, eyes growing heavier, you might remember less of the exact numbers and more of the feelings. The anxiety of seeing no more room for items, the comfort of stepping into a Pokémon Center to heal, the relief of an escape rope, the satisfaction of buying an Ultra Ball for a tough catch. Every menu, every little icon became part of a nightly routine, a set of familiar actions your fingers memorized even as your mind wandered. And somewhere in that loop, open menu, use item, deposit Pokémon, withdraw TM, save game, you can still feel the soft, predictable comfort of Kanto's everyday life. Not just a world of legendaries and big battles, but a world of tiny details that made you feel at home on a tiny glowing screen. A place where even checking your PC box or buying a potion could be part of the gentle rhythm that carried you slowly towards sleep. For a lot of people, their first Pokémon memories don't come from the Game Boy at all. They come from a TV screen, with a boy oversleeping, a broken alarm clock, and a late dash to Professor Oak's lab. That boy isn't called Red. In the anime, his name is Ash Ketchum, and his Japanese name, Satoshi, is a nod to Satoshi Tajiri, Pokémon's creator. Ash starts his journey in Pallet Town just like the game protagonist. But instead of choosing from 3 Pokéballs on a table, he arrives late and finds all 3 starters already taken. As a result, he's given a stubborn Pikachu, tying the anime directly to the franchise's rising mascot. One small factual difference: in the original games, Pikachu is just one of many electric types you can catch early on, most commonly in Viridian Forest. In the anime, Pikachu becomes Ash's first Pokémon and his fixed partner, refusing to go inside a Pokéball. This decision reinforced Pikachu's status as the franchise mascot worldwide. The first aired episode in Japan is the story of Ash receiving Pikachu and seeing a mysterious Ho-Oh flying through the sky. Ho-Oh is a legendary from the next generation, Yoto, which hadn't been released yet when that episode aired. That means the anime deliberately teased future content years before most players could encounter that Pokémon in a game. Many characters in the anime mirror their game counterparts with some tweaks. Misty is still a water-type gym leader from Cerulean City, but she travels with Ash as a main companion instead of staying in her gym. Brock is still the rock-type leader from Pewter, but he too leaves his post to join Ash's journey for a large stretch of episodes. Gym battles in the anime don't always follow game rules. Sometimes Ash technically loses, but still gets a badge because the gym leader recognizes his effort or heroism. For example, he earns some badges by saving a town or helping people, rather than just knocking out all of an opponent's Pokémon. The anime also adds family details that the games never mention. Misty has 3 older sisters who act as gym leaders in her absence. Brock has many younger siblings he cares for, and a father with his own backstory, filling Pewter City with more personal drama than the game ever shows. Team Rocket in the games is a criminal organization you battle a few times before dismantling it. In the anime, 3 specific members, Jessie, James, and Meowth, become recurring comic villains. They have their own trademark motto, their own balloon designs, and a running gag of being blasted off into the sky. Meowth has a unique factual detail. In the anime, he's one of the only Pokémon who speaks full human language regularly. In-game canon, Meowth is just a standard species with Meowth-type cries. The anime gives him a backstory about learning to talk and walk upright to impress another Meowth, turning him into a tragic comic figure. Ash's Pokédex in the anime is also more talkative than the in-game device. It reads out entries with a robotic voice, describing types and abilities for viewers. This helped children who never owned the games learn what each Pokémon was about just by watching the show. Specific episodes are packed with their own little facts. Bye Bye Butterfree is one of the earliest emotional highlights, where Ash releases his Butterfree so it can travel with a mate during a migration. This episode reflects a real biological phenomena of butterfly migration, wrapped in a story about letting go. Another iconic early episode features Charmander abandoned on a rock in the rain. The core fact about its tail flame, that if it goes out, the Charmander's life ends, is used as the emotional hook. Ash and his friends rescue it, and it later evolves into Charizard, whose disobedient behavior becomes a running theme. The anime sometimes references actual game mechanics in playful ways. You'll hear characters mention status conditions like paralysis or poison, or talk about type advantages in battles. But the show also breaks the rules constantly, with Pikachu defeating opponents it shouldn't realistically beat by game logic. Kanto's gyms appear with adjusted lineups or extra drama. For example, Loturt Surge's gym battle in the anime emphasizes the size difference between his Raichu and Ash's Pikachu. The story focuses on speed and agility as Pikachu's strength, mirroring the in-game idea that speed matters a lot. Another factual difference, Sabrina's portrayal in the anime is far more eerie than in the game text alone. She's shown as a powerful psychic with a creepy doll and the ability to bend reality inside her gym. This amplifies the unsettling vibe psychic types already had in Kanto's game balance. The anime also inserts filler episodes that never happened in the games. There are entire stories about giant Pokémon, theme parks, festivals, and side characters you'll never meet on your Game Boy. Some of these episodes were used to keep the show going while waiting for new games to release. One episode, Electric Soldier Porygon, became notorious and was banned after airing in Japan. A sequence with flashing red and blue lights caused seizures in some viewers, leading to stricter animation guidelines. Because of that, Porygon basically vanished from later anime appearances, despite being an important digital Pokémon in the games. The first Pokémon movie adds its own layer of Kanto lore. It features Mewtwo as a cloned Pokémon created from Mew's DNA in a lab, which lines up with Cinnabar Mansion's journal entries in the games. The movie expands that into a full story about cloning, identity, and a psychic being questioning its place in the world. In the original cut of the movie, Mewtwo's backstory is darker and more detailed, showing its early life in a lab and the loss of other test subjects. Some of these scenes were shortened or altered in different regional releases. The fact that a children's movie about Pokémon tackled such heavy themes became a talking point for years. The anime dub also created several name differences. For example, Satoshi became Ash, Shigeru became Gary, and many Pokémon attacks were renamed to match localized game terminology. These changes mean that fans in different regions grew up with slightly different versions of the same world. Theme songs are another factual layer of the anime's impact. The original Japanese opening, "Aim to be a Pokémon Master," and the English "Gotta Catch 'em All," both became iconic in their own right. Even people who haven't watched an episode in years can often hum a few lines or remember parts of the chorus. The Kanto anime arc loosely follows the progress of the games. Ash travels from town to town, battling gym leaders and collecting badges. However, he does not win the Pokémon League outright in the Indigo Plateau arc. Instead, he loses in the top 16, establishing a pattern of partial success and continued growth. This is another key difference from the games, where your player character becomes champion at the end of the Kanto story. The anime chooses a slower, more realistic growth for Ash, keeping him on a long journey across multiple regions. Kanto, in that sense, becomes just the first season in a much longer story. Several Kanto-specific events in the anime never show up in the games at all. There's an episode featuring a giant dragonite at a lighthouse, towering far above normal size. There are also themed locations like the Pokémon League Village, and various festival towns built just for single episodes. The show's art style in the Kanto era is noticeably different from later seasons. Character designs are simpler, with softer color palettes and fewer sharp highlights. When you rewatch those early episodes, they carry a kind of cozy, slightly rough charm compared to modern, polished animation. Voice acting also defines the Kanto era for many fans. Actors like Rika Matsumoto in Japanese and Veronica Taylor in the early English dub gave Ash a specific youthful energy. Those voices became so tied to the character that changes in later seasons were immediately noticeable to longtime viewers. Many small anime-only characters became beloved despite never appearing in mainline games. People remember trainers like Richie, who has his own Pikachu named Sparky, or recurring characters like the photographer Todd. These characters often represented different ways of relating to Pokémon, through photography, companionship, or competition. The anime's portrayal of Pokémon behavior added emotional layers to species that were just sprites in the games. You see things like a group of Squirtle forming a prankster Squirtle squad, with sunglasses, or a Jigglypuff obsessed with getting people to stay awake and listen to its song. These details made individual Pokémon feel like characters, not just battle units. Even the way Pokémon say their own names in the anime became part of their identity. In the games, they have digitized cries, but on TV they speak in recognizable patterns: Pika Pika, Bulbasaur, Char Char. These vocal habits made them easier for children to mimic and remember. The Kanto anime arc also helped showcase Pokémon that players might never use in their main team. Episodes centered around things like a flock of Spearow, a lonely Cubone, or a misunderstood Haunter gave screen time to underrated species. Suddenly, a Pokémon you always boxed in the game could become your favorite after a single good episode. As the anime aired alongside the games, it acted like a guide and a companion. Kids who didn't know where to find certain Pokémon in the game might recognize them from an episode and go looking. In this way, the Kanto anime and games formed a feedback loop, each feeding interest into the other. Looking back now, the early episodes are a time capsule. Zarash, Misty, Brock, Team Rocket, Pikachu, all of them moving through simplified versions of the places you explored as sprites. The facts and rules may not match the games perfectly, but together, they formed a single soft memory of what Kanto felt like. And when your eyes start to close, those old episodes play in your mind like a hazy rerun. The opening theme, the Who's That Pokémon silhouette, the Team Rocket motto, the final to be continued at the end of each story. All of it part of the same gentle looping world that began with a boy, a late morning, and a single stubborn Pikachu. At some point, the Pokémon world stopped being just pixels and anime frames. It started showing up in schoolyards, backpacks, and bedroom drawers. The first 151 quietly slipped off the Game Boy screen and turned into cardboard plastic and little holographic treasures. The Pokémon trading card game first appeared in Japan in 1996, the same year as the original Game Boy games there. In North America, the base set released in 1999 with 102 cards, Not all 151 Pokémon were in that first set, but many of the most iconic Kanto species were already present. Base set cards were divided into rarity levels: common, uncommon, rare, and rare holographic. Commons had a black circle, uncommons a black diamond, and rares a black star in the corner. Holographic rares had shiny foil art, and for many kids that shimmer was the whole point. Charizard from the base set became one of the most famous cards of all time. It was a Fire-type Stage 2 card with 120 HP and the attack Fire Spin that required discarding energy cards. The holographic Charizard quickly turned into a playground legend, treated more like a trophy than a card you actually played with. The card game has its own mechanics, separate from the Game Boy battles. You attach energy cards to power attacks, set up basic Pokémon on the bench, and evolve them over turns. You don't just feint and move on. Each opponent's Pokémon you knock out gives you a prize card, and drawing all your prize cards wins the game. The base set's Pokémon were drawn by multiple artists, giving them different visual flavors. Some art was realistic, some more cartoonish, some almost painterly. This variety made flipping through a binder feel like browsing a little gallery of interpretations of the same creatures. Each card had a few key details: name, HP, type symbol, attacks with energy costs and damage, and often a short flavor text. That flavor text sometimes included unique little lore bits not found in the games or anime. You could learn tiny facts about habits, habitats, or legends of Kanto Pokémon just by reading the bottom of the card. The earliest sets beyond base included Jungle and Fossil. Jungle added more grass and normal types like Eevee and its evolutions, and Fossil focused on things like Aerodactyl, Kabutops, and Articuno. These expansions gradually filled in more of the original 151 that base set hadn't covered. Jungle was the first expansion to introduce more evolutions in card form. Cards like Vaporeon, Jolteon, and Flareon appeared with their own powerful attacks and rich illustration styles. Eevee itself, with its branching evolution concept, became a favorite both in games and on cardboard. Fossil brought more attention to prehistoric and ancient-feeling Pokémon. Fossil-era cards included fossil Pokémon like Amenite and Kabuto, as well as legendary birds like Zapdos and Moltres. The set's theme matched the in-game idea of reviving fossils and exploring mysterious islands and caves. In the early days, card rarity turned into an informal social currency. Holographic rares were treated like treasure, often kept in sleeves or special binders. Even non-holo rares like Dragonite or Gyarados carried a certain weight when someone traded them across a desk or lunch table. Many kids didn't actually play the card game by the official rules at first. Instead, they compared card art, HP values, and attack damage, declaring the strongest card by raw numbers. Rules like energy attachments, prize cards, and bench management were learned slowly, often only by those who had access to rulebooks or starter decks. Starter decks were pre-constructed sets of cards designed to teach the game. They came with a rule insert, a coin for flips, damage counters, and a fixed selection of Pokémon and trainer cards. For many, opening a starter deck was their first introduction to the card game's structure and terminology. The card game also introduced trainer cards, which don't represent Pokémon at all. Cards like Professor Oak, Bill, and Potion let you draw cards, heal damage, or manipulate your deck. These cards showed familiar characters and items in a new way, tying game and card worlds together. Energy cards themselves came in types like Grass, Fire, Water, Lightning, Fighting, and Psychic. You needed them to pay the cost of attacks, attaching them to your Pokémon like fuel. Without energy, even the most impressive Pokémon card was helpless, a quiet parallel to needing PP and stats in the games. Special energy cards were introduced later, offering things like double colorless energy. Double colorless energy counted as 2 units of colorless energy, powering big attacks faster. Having a few of those in your deck could change the pace of your whole strategy. Beyond the cards, Pokémon toys started appearing in many forms. There were small plastic figures of Kanto Pokémon, often sold in sets or blind packs. These figures turned your favorite team into something you could line up on a shelf or desk. Burger King and other fast food chains ran promotions with Pokémon toys. Kids would collect little figures, spinning tops, or mini cards in special Pokeball-shaped containers. These items often hung around for years in drawers and toy boxes, outlasting the meals they came with. There were also plush toys of the first 151, with Pikachu being the most common. Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle, Jigglypuff, and Meowth plushies appeared on store shelves and in crane machines. For many younger fans, these plush toys became bedtime companions, blurring the line between game and real-life comfort. Posters and binders helped organize the explosion of Kanto imagery. You could buy large wall charts showing all 151 Pokémon, numbered in Pokédex order. Kids would stare at those posters, memorizing names and shapes, planning imaginary teams. Binders with card sleeves became a key part of the trading card culture. Cards were sorted by type, set symbol, or rarity, each in its own transparent pocket. Flipping those pages slowly was its own ritual, almost meditative, even if you never played a single actual match. Pokémon sticker albums and collectible sticker books added another layer. You'd buy packs of stickers, peel them, and match them to the numbered spots in an album. Completing an album with all 151 was like finishing a second Pokédex on paper. School supplies got involved too. There were Pokémon pencils, erasers, lunchboxes, notebooks, and backpacks featuring Pikachu and other Kanto Pokémon. The franchise followed kids into classrooms, turning everyday objects into reminders of the game. Clothing lines and pajamas featured Kanto designs. You could find shirts with all 151 printed in a grid, or single-character designs like a big, smiling Pikachu. For a while, it was almost impossible to go outside without seeing at least one child wearing something Pokémon-related. Guidebooks and Pokédex handbooks for the first 151 also became common. These books listed each Pokémon, its type, basic stats, and often a little lore blurb, or anime reference. They acted like real-life offline Pokédexes that you could read in bed or on car rides. Nintendo and other companies released tie-in gadgets. There were keychain virtual pets, small LCD games, and Pokédex-shaped electronic toys that stored basic information about the Kanto roster. Holding a red plastic Pokédex toy felt like carrying a piece of Ash's world in your pocket. The Pokémon trading card game itself eventually got a Game Boy adaptation. That Game Boy game let you battle AI opponents using digital versions of the actual cards. It included most of the early sets, letting players learn card rules and deck building without needing real cards. Official tournaments began to appear as the TCG grew. Players would bring decks, sit at long tables, and compete for badges, promos, or trophies. This competitive scene gave older kids and collectors a structured way to test their strategies. Promotional cards, or promo cards, were sometimes given away at events, in magazines, or with movies. Examples include special Pikachu promos, alternate art versions of existing cards, or unique cards with event stamps. These promos created new layers of rarity and gave fans more reasons to attend events or buy specific products. In many places, schools reacted to the sudden craze. Some allowed kids to trade cards during breaks, others banned cards entirely to avoid conflicts and distractions. This only added to the mystique, turning Pokémon cards into something slightly rebellious in some classrooms. All the while, the first 151 remained the heart of the franchise's visual identity. Even as new generations arrived, Kanto Pokémon were the ones on posters, t-shirts, and retro collections. They became shorthand for classic Pokémon, the faces of nostalgia. For individual fans, certain pieces of merchandise became deeply personal. Maybe it was a worn-out Pikachu plush, a scratched-up Charizard card, or a cracked plastic Pokeball toy. These objects ended up tied to specific memories, birthday gifts, vacations, friendships, that went far beyond the games themselves. Looking back now, you might not remember exactly every card rule or every product line. What lingers is a softer impression, trading cards on the playground, flipping through a binder before bed, hugging a plush Pokémon while watching the opening theme. The first 151 were no longer just things you saw on a screen. They were things you could hold, organize, trade, and keep. And as you drift closer to sleep, it's easy to picture a shoebox somewhere, tucked in a closet or under a bed. Inside, old cards are stacked in rubber bands, figures lie in a jumble, maybe a faded guidebook rests on top. A small physical time capsule of the days when Kanto spilled out into the real world and quietly took over everything for a while. For a while, it seemed like the story of Kanto ended at Indigo Plateau. You became champion, filled the Pokédex, and turned the Game Boy off. Then Gold and Silver released 1999 in Japan, 2000 in North America and Europe, and quietly gave everyone one of the biggest surprises in Pokémon history. In Pokémon Gold and Silver, after you beat the Johto League, the game doesn't roll permanent credits and stop. Instead, a man in Olivine City tells you that a ship to another region is now available. You board the SS Aqua in Olivine, and when you step off, you find yourself back in Vermilion City, back in Kanto. This was the first time a mainline Pokémon game let you fully revisit a previous region. You can walk to old towns like Pewter, Cerulean, and Saffron, hearing new versions of their music. The Kanto map is compressed and slightly simplified, but the bones of the old world are still there. Some areas changed to reflect the passage of time. For example, Cinnabar Island is mostly destroyed by a volcanic eruption in Gold and Silver, with its gym relocated to the Seafoam Islands. This is one of the only times the series shows a region suffering a large-scale natural disaster between games. Viridian Forest, which was a full maze in Red and Blue, becomes a smaller, simpler route in Gold and Silver. The original dense tree layout is gone, replaced by a short path with grass and trainers. This subtle change reflects how the second generation had to compress two whole regions into a single Game Boy cartridge. Many Kanto gym leaders are still active when you return, but their teams and levels have changed. Brock, Misty, Lute Surge, Erica, Janine replacing Koga, Sabrina, Blaine, and Blue each have updated lineups. Their Pokémon are stronger than before, and they reflect both Kanto heritage and Johto's expanded Pokédex. Koga, who was a gym leader in Fuchsia City in Red and Blue, is now a member of the Elite Four in Gold and Silver. His daughter Janine has taken over the Fuchsia Gym and uses Poison-type Pokémon just like her father. This is one of the earliest in-game examples of a gym leader being promoted, and a successor taking their place. The power plant near Rock Tunnel is up and running in Gold and Silver. Instead of being an abandoned building full of wild electric types and Zapdos, it's now staffed and functional. However, there's still a side quest related to a missing machine part, and a certain electric legendary roaming Kanto's skies. Some Kanto routes now include Johto Pokémon. You might see creatures like Hoot, Sentret, or other Johto natives mixed into tall grass that once held only Kanto species. This makes Kanto feel like it has evolved biologically as well, not just culturally. One landmark that grows in importance is Mount Silver. In Gold and Silver, Mount Silver is accessible only after you've collected all 16 badges, 8 from Johto, 8 from Kanto. The mountain is filled with powerful wild Pokémon and acts as the ultimate training ground. At the very top of Mount Silver waits a silent trainer in a red hat. His in-game name is simply Red, and his team is a high-level, fully evolved Kanto squad, including a level 81 Pikachu in the original Gold and Silver. This battle is widely regarded as one of the toughest and most iconic fights in the early franchise. Red's team in Gold and Silver typically includes Pikachu, Charizard, Blastoise, Venusaur, Snorlax, and Espeon. Almost all of those are directly tied to the Kanto experience. The starters, the classic tank, and a psychic evolution of an Eevee you can get in Johto. Facing him feels like fighting the memory of your younger self, or the ideal Kanto trainer. Fire Red and Leaf Green later brought Kanto back again on the Game Boy Advance in 2004, Japan and North America, and 2004-2005 elsewhere. These remakes update Red and Blue with Gen 3 graphics, abilities, and mechanics while keeping the basic story intact. They also introduced the Sevi Islands, new post-game areas that didn't exist in the original games. In Fire Red and Leaf Green, the Pokédex is initially limited to the Kanto roster. Only after beating the League and completing certain side quests do Johto and Hoenn Pokémon become available. This preserves the feeling of a pure 151 experience before opening the doors to later generations. The remakes also modernize Kanto's connectivity. They support trading and battling with Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald through Game-Link cables. This allowed you to move Kanto Pokémon into GBA-era teams, bridging generations in a new way. Heart Gold and Soul Silver, released in 2009 in Japan and 2010 internationally, revisit Johto and Kanto once more. They include remade Kanto locations with Nintendo DS graphics and quality-of-life improvements. You can still beat the Johto League and then return to an updated Kanto, just like in Gold and Silver. In Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Red's team on Mount Silver is even stronger. His Pikachu is level 88, and the rest of his team consists of high-level starters and powerful Kanto favorites. The battle remains one of the most demanding in the entire series, especially if you go in underleveled. Heart Gold and Soul Silver also add extra side content in Kanto, like more trainers, mini-events, and new items. Some gym designs are updated for variety and puzzle complexity. Despite these changes, the core geography of Kanto is still recognizable to anyone who played the original Game Boy games. Even beyond mainline games, Kanto keeps getting revisited. Pokémon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee for Nintendo Switch are modern reimaginings of Yellow's Kanto, released in 2018. They integrate Pokémon Go-style catching mechanics and feature Pikachu or Eevee riding on your shoulder or head as a constant partner. Let's Go's Kanto is rendered in full 3D with bright, colorful graphics. You can see wild Pokémon wandering in the overworld instead of random encounters in the grass. This makes familiar places like Viridian Forest or Lavender Town feel both new and comfortably old at the same time. The games also add small details like following Pokémon and motion-controlled catching. Many Kanto species respond with little animations or cries when you interact with them in the overworld. Even though the structure is similar, the experience of walking through this version of Kanto feels lighter and more playful. In nearly every later generation, Kanto Pokémon receive special attention. Alolan forms in Sun and Moon give new regional variants to classic species like Vulpix, Sandshrew, and Raichu. This suggests that the original 151 can adapt to different environments and cultures within the Pokémon world. Some Kanto Pokémon get new evolutions or pre-evolutions in later games. Examples include baby forms like Pichu, Cleffa, and Igglybuff, and evolutions like Magnezone, Rhyperior, and Electivire. These additions extend the family trees of Kanto species across generations. Kanto itself sometimes appears in background references, even when you're not visiting it directly. Characters mention traveling there, items come from companies based in Kanto, and certain moves or myths trace their origins back to that region. It becomes less a one-time setting, and more a historical homeland in the Pokémon universe. Spin-off titles revisit Kanto too. Pokémon Stadium on Nintendo 64 lets you battle with Kanto Pokémon in 3D using your Game Boy save as a base. Later, titles like Pokémon Puzzle League, Pokémon Pinball, and others use Kanto Pokémon and characters as their main cast. The constant returning to Kanto isn't just nostalgia, it's structural. Kanto is the foundation upon which every new region is compared, consciously or not. Its roots, gyms, and 151 species form a template the franchise keeps re-examining from new angles. For players, each return to Kanto is layered with memories. You might remember playing Red and Blue as a child, then revisiting in Fire Red and Leaf Green, then meeting Red on Mount Silver, then exploring Let's Go's version years later. Each visit adds new details to the same mental map, like tracing over an old drawing with fresh colors. As you lie there now, you can imagine overlaying all those versions of Kanto on top of each other. The monochrome map from the original Game Boy, the 16-bit palette of GBA remakes, the DS refinement, the Switch 3D. They're all the same region, but each one holds a different era of your life. In that sense, Kanto isn't just a fictional place. It's a kind of timeline you can walk through, one badge at a time. Every revisit is both a return to the same world and a quiet check-in with your own past, all wrapped around those same familiar 151 Pokémon. For a lot of kids, the world of the first Pokémon games didn't end at the cartridge. It kept going in whispered rumors on the playground, half-remembered secrets, and strange things that seemed to happen when no adults were watching. Kanto wasn't just a map, it was a story generator, and some of those stories were only barely connected to reality. One of the most famous pieces of that hidden layer is Missing No. Missing No isn't a normal Pokédex entry. It's a glitch Pokémon whose name literally stands for missing number. Encountering it usually involves talking to the old man in Viridian City, then flying to Cinnabar Island and surfing along the right-hand coastline, where the game reads garbage data as wild encounters. When you meet Missing No Door, the sprite often appears as a scrambled mess of pixels or a blocky, corrupted shape. Catching or even seeing it can cause graphical glitches, such as distorted Hall of Fame records. But one of the most popular side effects is that it duplicates the sixth item in your inventory, often used to multiply rare candies or master balls. Despite its odd behavior, Missing No can be caught and used in battle. Its type, moves, and stats vary depending on how the memory is read, but it's not an officially recognized Pokémon in any in-game Pokédex. Nintendo even acknowledged Missing No in support materials, warning that encountering it might cause strange behavior but wouldn't permanently damage the cartridge. Mew, the 1500 first Pokémon, is at the center of many myths. In the original games, there is no normal in-game way to obtain Mew without events or glitches. It was intended as a secret. Even so, rumors spread that Mew could be found by doing certain strange things, like checking specific tiles or using strength on odd objects. One of the most enduring legends is Mew under the truck. Near the SS Anne in Vermilion, there's a truck graphic that you normally never need to interact with. Kids claimed that if you used strength on the truck or met certain conditions, Mew would appear, something the actual game never supports. The truck does nothing mechanically. It's just a piece of scenery placed there for texture. But because it felt so out of place and so hard to reach without special tricks, players assumed it had to hide a secret. Another Mew-related myth involved finishing the Pokédex. Some believed that if you caught all 150 obtainable Pokémon and talked to Professor Oak, he would reward you with Mew. In reality, he only gives you a diploma-style in-game certificate, and congratulations, nothing more. A now well-known glitch called the Mew glitch does exist, but it wasn't documented widely until much later. It involves manipulating trainer encounters and the game's internal memory by using fly or teleport at specific times. Done correctly, it can force an encounter with a level 7 Mew on a certain route. Lavender Town has its own cloud of myths. The town's theme music in Red and Green Blue uses high-pitched, unsettling tones compared to other tracks. Over time, a creepypasta story called Lavender Town Syndrome claimed that the original Japanese music caused headaches or worse in children. A story with no basis in actual documented evidence, but a strong grip on the internet's imagination. Within the game, Lavender's Pokémon Tower holds the ghost of a Marowak. You can't catch this Marowak. It must be defeated to calm its spirit. That one detail, that it's a ghost of a specific Pokémon and not a generic wild encounter, adds a rare, explicit reference to death and mourning in an otherwise cheerful game. Creepy rumors branched out from Lavender to other places. People told stories about unseen ghosts in certain buildings, or suggested that faint, distorted cries in caves meant something mysterious. In reality, most of these were just sound quirks or misheard notes in the Game Boy's limited audio. Button press myths were another huge category. Kids insisted that holding A and B, or tapping down Booby at the right time, increased catch rates when throwing Pokeballs. The actual catch formula doesn't check for button input at all, but the ritual felt so real that many players still press buttons just in case. There were also rumors about secret evolutions or Poké gods. Some claimed you could evolve a Raichu into a Gorachu, a scrapped concept that actually did exist briefly in early design discussions but never in-game. Others believed you could evolve starter Pokémon into impossible forms by leveling them up to 100 without evolving, or by using rare items that did not exist. Poké god myths often involved supposed Pokémon beyond the 5-1. Names like Pika Blue were used for Meryl before its official reveal as if it was a secret evolution of Pikachu. Before Generation 2 was widely known, fans treated any new design they glimpsed in magazines or anime as evidence of hidden Kanto secrets. The Seafoam Islands, Cerulean Cave, and other late-game areas also attracted rumors. Players reported seeing extra legendary Pokémon or rare, unnamed species deep inside them. In reality, these places held Articuno, Mewtwo, and strong versions of known species, but the atmosphere made imaginations run wild. Some myths came from simple misunderstandings. The man in Viridian who teaches you to catch Pokémon was sometimes thought to unlock special encounters if you watched his tutorial many times. In truth, his main secret connection is technical. His encounter data contributes to the missing no glitch when combined with surfing by Cinnabar. There were also rumors about Professor Oak being a final secret boss. Stories claimed that if you did everything perfectly, completing the Pokédex, beating the Elite Four multiple times, you would eventually battle Oak himself with a powerful team. In the original games, that never happens. Oak does have unused battle data in the game files, but it isn't used in normal play. Cerulean Cave, where you find Mewtwo, fed a lot of speculation. Because the cave is only open after you become champion and has no music in red-blue, just ambient sounds, it felt like forbidden territory. Players imagined even stronger, hidden Pokémon beyond Mewtwo, deeper in the cave, even though the map has a clear endpoint. The Hidden Garden myth said there was a secret area behind Bill's house, or in other locations that housed rare Pokémon like Mew or Celebi. People spread exact steps you had to follow. Walk here, talk to this NPC, spin in circles, then press A. None of these sequences worked, but they gave players a sense of being part of a shared mystery hunt. Some rumors centered around the idea of becoming a gym leader yourself. Children claimed that if you beat the league enough times or obeyed certain rules, you could take over a gym and receive challengers. The code for such a feature doesn't exist in the original games, but the idea matched players' imaginations about what comes after being champion. Glitched maps had their own legends. By using certain cheats or GameShark codes, players could walk into map areas that weren't meant to be visited, sometimes called Glitch City. These places had scrambled graphics and broken collision, making the game feel like it was unraveling. GameShark and other cheat devices amplified all these myths. You could input codes to walk through walls, encounter any Pokémon at will, or max out your items and stats. For kids who saw these effects secondhand, it was easy to confuse cheat-induced glitches with real hidden content. Even small NPC comments spawned theories. A sign mentioning that the Safari Zone is closing in later remakes sparked speculation that the zone would be removed or replaced. Lines about unknown dungeons, far-off regions, or future tech were read as hints, sometimes accurately predicting later game ideas. Some myths accidentally predicted real future features. People fantasized about traveling to other regions in one game long before Gold and Silver actually allowed Johto and Kanto in one cartridge. Ideas like riding Pokémon or seeing them follow behind you popped up in fan talk before Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and Let's Go made them real. Because official information was limited in the early days, word of mouth became the main patch notes. Kids swapped strategies, claimed discoveries, and sometimes exaggerated or misremembered details. The result was a shared folklore where proven mechanics, real glitches, and complete inventions mixed together. Magazines and early websites both helped and hurt clarity. Some guides published half-verified rumors or speculative secrets, and early fan sites sometimes presented glitches as intended features. This gave myths extra weight, turning them into almost official stories for a while. Even now, decades later, those old legends have a strange comfort. You might know for sure that Mew isn't under the truck, and that holding B doesn't change catch rates. But remembering those stories is like remembering ghost stories from childhood. They were part of how you explored the world. In a way, Kanto's biggest hidden area wasn't in the code. It was the space between what the game showed and what players imagined might still be hiding. That empty space filled up with missing no, Mew under trucks, secret bosses, and Poké gods, all swirling around the solid little world on the cartridge. Now, when your thoughts drift back half asleep, You don't just recall the official routes and gyms. You remember the rumors that there was more. One extra door, one extra Pokémon, one extra battle waiting if you did things just right. The facts and the myths blur together into a single, cozy memory of Kanto as a place that always felt bigger than what you could see. Even after the original cartridges aged, the myths around them didn't really disappear. They moved onto forums, early fan sites, and later social media, where people compared what they remembered as kids. Sometimes two people would discover they'd both grown up with the same completely wrong secret and laugh about it years later. One simple fact is that a lot of these stories survived longer than the actual hardware they ran on. Game Boy screens got scratched, save batteries died, plastic shells yellowed with age, but the idea that Mew might be hiding just off-screen, or that one last secret door was still undiscovered, stayed fresh in people's conversations. Speedrunners eventually dissected the game's code. They discovered ways to warp straight to the Hall of Fame, to trigger instant credits, and to manipulate encounters down to specific frames. All of this pulled the curtain back on Kanto's inner machinery, in a way that early rumors could only guess at. Glitched Pokémon beyond Missing No got their own cataloging. Names like M, LM4, and other strange internal identifiers were documented in fan-made glitch dexes. Each one had specific properties, types, moves, and behaviors, rooted not in design, but in how corrupted data was being read as if it were a real creature. Some glitches became tools rather than curiosities. Players used them to clone items, access event-only Pokémon that were no longer legitimately obtainable, or complete Pokédexes long after official distributions had ended. For some, this felt like breaking the rules. For others, it felt like rescuing content that would otherwise be lost forever. At the same time, Kanto-inspired creepypasta stories multiplied. There were tales about haunted cartridges where the player character moved on their own, or save files named Ghost that behaved strangely. A common pattern was a normal playthrough slowly turning unsettling, culminating in a corrupted world or a message from beyond the game. These stories weren't official, but they stuck because they used real in-game details as anchors. They referenced places like Lavender Town, Pokémon Tower, dead Marowak spirits, or glitch sprites that players really had seen. By blending real mechanics with fiction, the creepypastas felt like they could almost be true. One recurring fan concept was the lost silver-type ending, or bad end, to a Pokémon adventure. In these stories, neglect or cruelty toward Pokémon led to dark consequences, like abandoned partners returning as ghosts. While nothing like this exists in the official games, the theme showed how strongly people personified their little sprites. Online Pokédex sites and wikis started to collect all these bits of lore. They listed official facts like height, weight, and abilities alongside notes about glitches, scrapped content, and fan theories. This created a layered reference library where canon, code, and community stories sat side by side. Some unused content hidden in the game's data added fuel to speculation. Players discovered unused cries, placeholder trainers, and leftover map elements that never appear in normal play. Even if they were just remnants of development, their existence hinted at a slightly bigger Kanto that almost was. Music arrangements and remixes of Kanto themes became their own branch of fandom. Fans took tracks like the Pallet Town theme, the Route 1 music, or Lavender Town's melody, and reworked them into piano covers, lo-fi beats, or orchestral pieces. Through those remixes, the same handful of Game Boy melodies gained entirely new moods. Fan art continued to reinterpret the original 151. Some artists drew them in realistic styles, imagining how creatures like Gyarados or Arcanine might look as real animals. Others leaned into humor, exaggerating quirks like Psyduck's headaches or Jigglypuff's frustration with sleeping audiences. There are full fan projects built around Kanto as well. ROM hacks and fan games frequently start with the original map and then twist it, adding new routes, alternate storylines, or new what-if encounters. Those projects exist in a gray area legally, but they show how strongly the base template of Kanto still inspires creativity. Even official media references the old myths sometimes. You'll see subtle nods to things like the truck near the harbor, the idea of strange glitches, or certain rumored locations. They rarely confirm the myths outright, but they wink at the audience who knows the old stories. For individuals, the myths often blend with personal memories. You might remember an older sibling or friend insisting they had a special version of the game where you could become a gym leader, or recall someone who swore they saw a blue Pikachu before anyone knew what Marfurdial was called. There's a kind of comfort in realizing that many people, in different countries and languages, shared almost the same rumors. Kids who never met each other still believed in Mew under a truck, still mashed baggage during Pokeball throw. It gives the impression that Kanto wasn't just a single-player game. The first 1541 sit at the center of that shared mythology. Each species has at least one real fact, dex entry, type combo, evolution method, and sometimes a shadow made of rumors and fan ideas. Jangar as someone's shadow, Cabone and its missing mother, Ditto as a failed Mew clone. None of those are confirmed in the games, but they live on as widely known interpretations. Over time, official material sometimes leans into or away from these fan notions. Later Pokédex entries might gently support a theory, or completely ignore it. But by then, the fan version of the story has already taken on a life of its own. If you step back, you can see three layers around the first 151. There's the literal layer, stats, moves, types, official canon. There's the code layer, glitches, unused data, internal values. And finally, there's the mythic layer, the stories players told each other to fill in the gaps. Lying in the dark now, you don't have to separate those layers. You can remember all of it at once, the official Pokédex, the scrambled missing Nomo sprite, the urban legends about haunted Lavender Town music. Together, they make Kanto feel strangely alive for something that fits on an old cartridge. It's easy to picture that tiny game world still running somewhere inside a Game Boy left in a drawer. Red or Leaf stands in Pallet Town. The rival waits on Route 22. The old man dozes in Viridian. A truck sits uselessly by a harbor. Mewtwo rests deep in Cerulean Cave. And just off the edge of the map, in the blank space where no tiles exist, the myths and glitches you grew up with continue looping quietly, like dreams the game never quite had, but everyone remembers anyway. We've walked a long way together through this little world, from a gray Game Boy screen and a boy leaving his house in Pallet Town, all the way to myths, glitches, cards, anime, and distant remakes. Somewhere along the way, the 151 stopped being just data and turned into something you carry quietly in your head. You've heard about how the idea began with catching insects and watching seasons, how a link cable meant for simple matches became a bridge for trading tiny creatures, how memory limits shaped the number of Pokémon, their cries, and even which ones came first. We wandered past starters and mascots, through forests and caves and cities with color names. We stopped by gyms and their leaders, from Brock's Rock Wall to Sabrina's Psychic Labyrinth and Giovanni's Double Life in Viridian. Along the way, rivals grew stronger, badges stacked up, and one last battle at Indigo Plateau decided who would be called champion. We peek behind the curtain at strange early mechanics. Speed-based critical hits, badges that quietly boosted stats, glitch Pokémon like Missing Noor, and the odd way focus energy worked backwards from what it promised. All those hidden rules hummed under the surface while kids just pressed A and hoped for the best. Then the world began to move in a different way on TV screens. Ash and Pikachu, Misty and Brock, Team Rocket's motto, and all the gym leaders reimagined as full characters with families, backstories, and running jokes. The anime didn't always follow the game's rules, but it gave voices and habits and faces to sprites you'd only seen as tiny icons. Outside of screens, the first 151 escaped into cards, toys, posters, and plushies. Charizard holographics lived in plastic sleeves, Pikachu plushies sat on pillows, posters of all 151 watched from bedroom walls. For a lot of people, Pokémon meant a binder, a deck, a shoebox filled with cardboard and plastic just as much as it meant a cartridge. We went forward in time, too, to see how Kanto refused to stay finished. Gold and silver let you come back by ship, Fire Red and Leaf Green rebuilt the journey. Heart Gold and Soul Silver sharpened it. Let's Go painted it in bright 3D. Red waited on Mount Silver, stronger than ever, like the memory of your younger self challenging you to one more match. Around all of that, the myths and stories never stopped. In Mudju, under a truck, secret battles with Professor Oak, Poké gods, haunted cartridges, Lavender Town rumors, button press rituals during Pokéball throws. Most of them were never true in the code, but they were true in a different way, as shared memories between kids who all wanted Kanto to be just a little bit bigger than it really was. The facts of the first 151 are fixed: names, numbers, types, weights, moves, locations. But what those facts mean is different for everyone. For one person, Pidgeot might just be an early game bird. For another, it's the first partner that beat the Elite Four at 2 a.m. on a school night. If you think about it, the Pokédex you built in your head is more detailed than the one in the game. It includes where you were sitting when you caught certain Pokémon, who was watching, which song was playing from the TV in the next room. It includes old friends, schoolyards, trades that went wrong or right, and the feeling of a dimly lit screen in your hands. All of that is wrapped around a simple list of 151 creatures from a game made for a tiny handheld. That's the quiet magic of it. Something small became large because people poured their own time and emotion into it. Kanto didn't need day-night cycles, 3D graphics, or hundreds of regions to feel endless. It just needed you walking through it. Now, as this long trail of facts and memories slows down, you don't need to keep any of it straight. You don't have to remember which TM did what, or how the catch formula works, or the exact order of the routes. It's enough to let it all blur into a soft collage of chiptune music, pixel sprites, card art, and half-remembered rumors. Somewhere in that collage, a Game Boy power light is still glowing faintly. A save file sits in Pallet Town, your team lined up, waiting for the next adventure that may never come. They're not in any hurry, they've been waiting years already, and they'll wait as long as you need. For now, you can gently put Kanto back on its shelf. Let the link cable go slack, let the battle themes fade, let the Pokeballs stop wobbling. The one will still be there tomorrow, and the day after that, exactly where you left them. Take a slow breath in, and a long, easy breath out. Let the rotes, gyms, myths, and melodies drift to the edges of your mind, like the fog on a quiet rote one morning. And if you fall asleep with a few last facts still circling, don't worry. They'll be waiting, patiently, the next time you decide to visit Kanto in your dreams.